to another episode of Making Monsters. Taylor Dahl here. The Bears are 9-3 and first in the NFC. It's a little wild. I feel like I'm still in shock, but now it's hate week. So we're moving on to that, and we're going to talk some Bears Packers today, starting off with Aaron Leming. You know him, writes about the Bears for 24/7 Sports. So Aaron, thanks for hopping on with me and talking some winning football right now. It's fun.
I know, right? The year that I finally just say, all right, I'm done podcasting. I want to do other things is the year that all of a sudden they're good again. So it's like, okay, maybe I should have done this a while ago.
Yeah, sometimes it is the vibes need a little bit of change. But I was wondering that because I remember you posting something about taking a break, but then I was seeing you post about the Bears again. And I was like, they reeled you back in. They reel us all back in.
Yeah. It was more of like a song. I really wanted to cut back on the writing and stop the podcasting. So it was more of, not spending basically my entire day after the game writing and then the next day writing and then the next day writing and, then obviously doing a podcast on top of that. So this is a lot more manageable and it gives me a chance to do a bit more. So
I get that. And well, we appreciate your work as always when it does come to breaking down some of the Bears stuff. So let's get into that. Let's start with, to me, what feels like one of the bigger factors in this game, and that's the run game on both sides for the Packers and for the Bears. Kyle Monangai did end up on the injury report yesterday. We've seen what Ben Johnson and company have done this year. The Wednesday injury report doesn't always indicate what's going to happen throughout the rest of the week. But let's just start with the Kyle Monangai conversation and what that run game has looked like, especially most recently for the Bears.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Also, just FYI, I don't know how well these headphones pick up things in the background, but if you hear one of my idiot dogs barking, he's just randomly lost his mind. So just kind of ignore that. I'll put myself on mute when you're talking just in case. But yeah, I think the thing with the injuries is kind of like you alluded to, as we've learned, it's one of those things where the Wednesday report, even estimation or not, there's nothing we can take out of it because we've seen guys that are a little banged up. If they have any sort of ailment whatsoever, they're probably going to be on it. We've seen Kyle Monangai on it a few times. Obviously, there's been a few different ailments. Same thing with Roma Dunze. So I'm not particularly worried about the injury report, but I think when you're kind of just looking at this team as a whole, I think they are getting healthier. So I think that's at least a plus at this point. Obviously, you kind of look over to the Packers side of things, and they're starting to get healthier too. But like Ben Johnson's talked about, they wanted to play the best, football in December, and one of the only ways you can do that is if you actually have a healthy roster. So I think, at least to me, I think one of the things is obviously the offensive line and the running back. So hopefully Kyle Monangai is all right. Obviously, keep all their offensive linemen healthy, and I think that their running game is going to be a huge key down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think part of that, one of the bigger conversations and why I said I feel like it's going to be a big storyline in this game. Weather's a part of it. Once it starts getting frigid cold, a lot of guys will run the ball, or teams will run the ball a little bit more than maybe you're used to. But another thing is obviously Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons has always been known, he's incredible at getting to the quarterback, the pass rushing side of things, but he has been known to struggle against the run. So if that's something that the Bears can take advantage of, then I think you have to lean heavily into that this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, it kind of goes twofold, right? Because I think when you look at the Bears offense, it's kind of a similar situation. Like, and Ben Johnson has kind of talked about it as well. Like their passing game is struggling right now. And I think one of the ways to combat, like you just pointed out with the pass rush, their pass rush is going to be better, at least on paper, than what they are defending the ball. And part of that's because of injuries. Again, Lucas Van Ness hasn't played lately. Devontae Wyatt is out for the year with, I think it was an ankle or a knee injury. I can't remember. Either way, he's out for the year. So it's like you start looking at the interior of that defensive line and it's taken some hits. And again, Micah Parsons is a fantastic player, but he's a much better pass rusher than he is, a run defender. So I think, especially when you're talking about the weather, you're talking about Caleb Williams and his sporadic accuracy as of late, the receivers either dropping balls, slipping on routes, whatever the case may be. I think for the remainder of the year, and kind of like we saw in Detroit with Ben Johnson as a whole, indoors or outdoors, their identity is going to revolve around the run game. And I think especially with their offensive line, that's just kind of one of their strengths anyway.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about Caleb Williams because I did a podcast earlier in the week on Tuesday, and we were talking about Caleb. And obviously, Ben Johnson has spoken on this week about the passing game in general not being where he wants it to be. Caleb's struggles are there. And we see it. There's some inconsistencies. There's still some accuracy issues. There's still things he's gotten better at this season, though. And the big one is that, the not holding the ball so long, not taking those sacks, that pressure to sack ratio is a lot better than it was last season. So that's some of those things that you see him getting better at. You even look at this last week, the touchdown that he threw to Cole Kmet. It was beautiful. It's one of those passes where you're like, you see it, you see the pieces there that Caleb Williams can do. You just need things to kind of settle. And is it all Caleb? No, because to your point, receivers have dropped passes. We've seen maybe some guys maybe not running. It looks like miscommunication, whether that's on Caleb Williams or whether that's on wide receivers. I don't think we always know that, but it does. Ben Johnson kind of threw in there a little bit about what made me feel like it was some route running issues in certain areas recently too. So he's a perfectionist. That's one of the words I've heard about Ben Johnson, is how much of a perfectionist, of how the wide receivers, he wants their feet on this certain hash mark at this certain second in a route. And so those things I think are going to take some time to all come together. But what to you do you need to see this next 5 weeks from a Caleb Williams to feel like the development that you'd like to see, the trajectory is happening?
Yeah, well, kind of like you pointed out, part of it already is, right? I mean, we're seeing a much more confident quarterback. Ben Johnson touched on it, I think it was Tuesday. I think Tuesday was his last presser. And he basically talked about how his command at the line of scrimmage, him being able to manage the game, not a game manager, but manage the game in terms of getting the line, being able to use the hard count, being able to use the cadence as a weapon, being able to get out of the huddle, break the huddle with 25 seconds left, on the play clock there. Like, those are the kind of things where if people really go back and they look at it, I mean, those first few weeks are really rough. I mean, their penalties have gone down tremendously, especially when you're talking pre-snap. So I think that there is a good level of growth. And like you pointed out too, the sack avoidance is at an elite level. I mean, it's not even comparable to anybody else right now, which is incredible. So I think obviously the next step, and I think a lot of this comes down to footworks and mechanics. I think that it's weird. He has a tendency of making the easy throws look hard and the hard throws look easy.
Yeah.
So I think that getting those layups, being a little bit more accurate, obviously on the deep down the field shots will help too, but just really the consistency. And I mean, even when you go back and you look at Jared Goff in year one of Ben Johnson, like his completion percentage did dip a little bit as well. So obviously, these last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, I think you want to see at least a passing game. It's probably not just magically going to click and he's going to start throwing for 300 yards a game and 3 or 4 touchdowns every game. But I think if they can complement the running game well, and they could actually be a more well-rounded offense, I think that's kind of more of what I'm looking at. Again, he's going to be under a microscope regardless. Mm-hmm. I think, especially with how Drake May's playing. Last year was Jaden Daniels. This year it's Drake May. I think with no matter what happens when you're the first quarterback taken, or the second or the third, really, and you have one of those guys in the vicinity that is playing at an extremely high level, I think that there's always going to be these unfair comparisons. But I think the reality is, and I think what a lot of fans need to understand is, like, they're 9-3 mm-hmm. in year one of Ben Johnson's offense, a very complex offense. This is year 2 for Caleb Williams. The fact that they're winning games, this isn't unsustainable like it was in 2018 with Trubisky, where you could just see a lot of the issues. Like, the ceiling is not even close to being met. So I think, regardless of what happens over these next 5 games or 6 games, if they get into the playoffs or whatever the case may be, I think it's really just about trying to have the passing game complement the run game at this point.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of stuck out to me this last week and shows that Ben Johnson still has the confidence in what Caleb Williams can and will eventually be able to do in his eyes is, even when the passing game was not working against Philly and they could pretty much run the ball all they want, he still threw the ball almost 40 times. And so to me, that is Ben Johnson saying, I still want Caleb Williams to be a part. To your point, maybe it's complementary. Some days it may be Caleb taking over, and we've seen him be able to do that late in games. And I feel like Ben Johnson knows you're inching closer to have that game where it is a Caleb Williams game. But there's a lot of other factors that go into that, so that'll be part of it. Let's talk a little bit about the offensive line. That's been one of the more pleasant surprises this year. I guess you could say surprise. They put a lot into it. They invested obviously with Drew Dahlman, Tooney, and Jonah Jackson on the inside. And there was a reason for that because it's been a problem here in Chicago for a long time. But now you are seeing all three of those guys really start to gel. The interior looks really good. Darnell Wright, I think he has his penalty issues every now and then, but outside of that is absolutely tremendous. The way he moves men, and I mean, there's some things that he does that's just incredible. That left side has been the more fluctuating. It looks like right now, I guess Ozzie has got that job back. It's been kind of back and forth, obviously, between him and Theo. So we'll see what that looks like for the year. But I feel like the Packers are going to try and take advantage of that side of the line because everybody knows the weakness is on the left side. But so what do you think Ben Johnson can do this week to kind of counter that game plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think if you look at the last few weeks as a whole, I mean, left tackle's been, I don't know if I'd say an issue because I don't know if issue is fair, but it's definitely been the weak point all year, right? So, and they found ways, especially as of late, really since they've come out of the bye week, to kind of scheme around it and be able to avoid those issues. Because if you remember, go back to that Raiders game, I mean, Max Crosby wrecked that game.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of lessons learned there. Part of it was obviously being able to establish the run game. But also, just being able to, I mean, there was multiple times this last weekend where Ozzie Trapello got beat.
Yeah.
And he didn't actually, him getting beat, like not touching anybody, like that bad beat. And it was still, the play was not affected because of how they were able to maneuver around things. And I think part of it is Caleb Williams. I think part of it's the play calling. I think that, kind of going back to the offensive line as a whole, it's like, you talked about, them adding the 3 new guys on the interior and the expectation would be that they would be better. But I mean, how many times in the past, granted, the level of talent added wasn't the same, but how many times in the past have we seen this team go out and make moves and you expect things to get substantially better and they don't? And I think that that's a huge testament to this coaching staff, obviously Ben Johnson, but obviously Dan Rouchar as well. I think Rouchar is one of those guys that he's probably been their biggest assistant coaching hire outside of probably Dennis Allen at this point, maybe Al Harris. I mean, he's been that good. Like this offensive line has gone from one of the worst in the league to all of a sudden one of the best in the league. And it's funny because I kind of felt that way the last few weeks. I'm like, nah, I'm probably just being a homer about this. But then you start listening to different people nationally and they're like, yeah, this is one of the best offensive lines in football right now. So I think when you have one weak point versus what the Bears have had over the last 5-6 years of having multiple weak points along the line, I think if you have one weak point, you're able to scheme a little bit. And I think the thing with Micah Parsons is he's not just going to line up on the edge. That's something that we've seen pretty consistently since his time going back to Dallas. Like he's going to line up over the center. He's going to line up basically wherever he wants to. So I think a lot of this is going to come down to scheme, and I think a lot of this is going to come down to probably a quicker passing game and having that outlet. And that's where Caleb Williams is going to have to be able to check the ball down in those types of situations and not play Superman and not try to avoid every single sack. Like sometimes you just have to hit the running back. Yeah. You have to hit the, whatever the shallow flat is, just hit that, live to play another down.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we've kind of talked about throughout the season with him is those easy button throws. To your point earlier, sometimes he makes those more difficult ones where you're like, how the hell did he just do that look easy? And then the ones where you're like, how did he just miss that? But that, I think that's just, it's a little bit of Caleb. And I think some of that is what Ben Johnson is reeling in, but you also don't want to lose what Caleb Williams is because he is that Superman type of player. And so you don't want to totally get rid of that. Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball a little bit. Should be getting Noah Sewell back. He was a full participant. TJ Edwards was limited. We know Tremaine's on IR, but you are getting some of those linebackers back that you've been missing, which, by the way, I think the backup when it comes to Nagbagba and obviously DeMarco Jackson have done a good job being thrown into a situation where DeMarco all of a sudden was wearing the green dot and was told that a couple days before that would be happening. I want to give credit to those guys because I think they've played good football and in the time they've been asked to. But you do want your linebackers that have been on the defense for the majority of the year and that you want starting. And so those guys coming back, I do think will benefit when it comes to the run game. I think having Kyler Gordon back benefits that run defense too. So some of the things that you see defensively of this, them getting healthy, how do you think that'll affect it this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's going to be big. And I think, it's kind of a twofold thing, like you pointed out. I think linebacker, obviously, with the short and intermediate pass game, and then the run game is going to be big. And maybe I'm on an island here. I don't know. I think even when Noah Sewell comes back, if it were me, I'd be going to Marco Jackson at will, and then TJ Edwards at Mike until Tremaine Edmonds gets back. I don't think Noah Sewell is a type of athlete that you can put at will. And I think we've already kind of seen TJ Edwards at will before, where he's okay, but he's more of a Mike than he is a will.
Yeah.
Exactly. So but again, to have options, I mean, you look in the secondary and it's the same thing. Everybody was so concerned what they were going to do with CJ Gardner-Johnson when Kyler Gordon got back. And it's like, who cares? Like they're in a situation right now where they finally have almost a full stable of defensive backs. I think, Tyreek Stevenson was a non-participant, but we'll see. I mean, at this point in time, I mean, they have so many options, and that's great because they can do different things. And I think, especially when you look at this defensive line, I mean, it's honestly incredible. If there's one complaint I've had so far this year, how do you spend so much money and so much resources on defensive line and they still can't get after the quarterback? Like to me, that's crazy. But that's a situation that they're in. Luckily, Dennis Allen is somewhat used to dealing with this because he's never really targeted like those true pass rushers off the edge. So I think just having the different options to be able to do different things, especially in the secondary and maybe even at linebacker, like I think you're going to see a lot of personnel changings, a lot of, whether it's nickel, dime, whatever the case may be. I think you're going to see a lot less base package. And especially against a team like the Packers, I think you almost have to, depending on if Jaden Reed's back. But, I mean, you've got Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. You've got Golden, who could be returning as well. I mean, they've got a lot of speed on the outside at receiver. And that's something that the Bears have struggled with defending Matt LaFleur's offense, regardless of who the defensive coordinator has been. So I think, if you're not going to be able to get after the quarterback, you got to be able to cover. You got to be able to confuse. And I think that's what they're going to have to do. And I think that having better talent and more options back there can only help that.
Yeah, I think that being able to have a healthy rotation. I mean, we saw last week with both Jalen Johnson and Kyler coming back, and they were, I don't know if they were on the field at the same time at any point. It was very a kind of rotation of what was going on, but it worked. And I know there's been moments. I mean, Nashawn Wright is a ball hawk. The guy is just all over the place. And so you don't want to just take it away from him because he's somebody that's constantly forcing those turnovers. And I saw, which I'll have Peter Bukowski on later, and he will be talking the Packers side. He tweeted, like, take away their turnovers and their defensive EPA is negative, blah, 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 or whatever the case may be. And everyone's like, okay, well, that's their identity. And it hasn't been like a 4 or 5 game sample size. We're now 13 weeks into the NFL, and that's their identity right now defensively. With having injuries, they're still able to get those takeaways. So it's not something that is not in their wheelhouse week to week. So yeah, you take away any team's best attribute on one side of the ball and things change. That's what you take Micah Parsons' arms away, and he's not pass rushing very well. But I do think when we talk about the pass rush, it clearly has to get better. What they did this offseason was clearly not enough. You've seen it get a little with Austin Booker coming back and getting healthy. You've seen a little bit more from him. You've seen Javon Dexter get a little bit better throughout the season. Grady Jarrett getting healthy. You're seeing him in the mix a little bit more. Obviously, Montez Sweat has played a lot better in the second half compared to the beginning. I read a stat earlier. Montez Sweat's actually tied for the most forced turnovers caused by pressure with 4 of those. So he's maybe not getting that sack number you want, but he is making quarterbacks kind of force some throws, make some decisions they probably don't want to. And I think that's going to be another key for this weekend, Aaron, because we have seen when Jordan Love is kind of having to leave the pocket and do some other creative things and force some throws, that's when he makes the mistakes. And that's what you want to see Jordan Love have to do.
Yeah, well, and kind of going back to that Peter Bukowski thing for a second. So, and I think you brought up a really good point, right? So earlier in the season when they were creating all these takeaways, you could argue that it wasn't sustainable, right? But when you're, 3/4 the way through the season, at this point, it is sustainable. I think that people need to understand that sustainability from game to game in a season is very different from sustainability from a season to season standpoint. Will those turnovers translate into next year? Probably not, but this is this year. So I don't really understand that argument. But yeah, going back to the pass rush, I think and it's kind of something, I don't know what your feelings were when they signed, Dio and made didn't make some of the moves that I thought they should have made. But it was one of those situations where you look at a guy like Montez Sweat. He's a good player. He's a very good defensive end too. He's exactly what you would want a Rashawn Gary to be, right? Where you put a very good pure pass rusher on the other side of him, and you let him reap the rewards of having basically single blockers in front of him. And unfortunately, he's been miscast over the last, basically since he's been with the Bears, where he's the one that everybody's accounting for with the double and triple teams. And again, he's not a pure pass rusher, and that's fine. That's not what they got him for. But I think that, and that's kind of the thing with Dennis Allen, going back to how much better this coaching staff has been, where you look at, it's like, yeah, their defense, like when you're looking at the metrics, their defense isn't very good. But at the same time, they've had a lot of injuries. There's a multitude of different things, but the reality is, like, they just haven't had a good overall pass rush. So what Dennis Allen has been doing is sending different blitzes, simulating pressures, doing different things to really create confusion for the quarterback. And I think that, again, it's not going to lead to a top 5, top 10 defense this year. I think we already know that. I think that the goal down the stretch essentially needs to be just be league average. If you can be league average and the running game can do what they're doing and you can get the passing game to complement it, I mean, this is already a top 7 offense. Like, if you get the passing game performing better and you can get in that top 3 to top 5 range, like, I don't know that you can win a Super Bowl with that, but you can sure win a playoff game or two, and you can at least challenge depending on what happens. And especially with those takeaways, it all kind of levels out. So I think it's really about relying on this coaching staff to continue to do what they've been doing, which is adjusting, whether that's quarter to quarter, half to half, game to game, whatever the case may be, regardless of what the personnel is, they've been able to adjust. And at least for me, I mean, that's not something I've been used to watching the Bears and God knows how long. And I think that that's been one of the big difference makers between them and every other team in the division when they're playing each other, is the fact that the Bears haven't been able to make adjustments. And guys like Matt LaFleur, guys like Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, all of them have been able to. And I think we're starting to see the Bears make those adjustments. And I think that that's why they're able to win these games in the fourth quarter.
All right, Aaron, how are you feeling about this weekend?
I'm not as weirdly confident as I was last week, but again, it's hard to project. It's hard to project the Bears and the Packers, and it's really hard to project the Bears and the Packers when it comes to Lambeau Field. I will say, like, I do get this weird gut feeling that they're somehow going to win. I mean, I was weirdly confident about last week's game. I don't know why. Not nearly as confident this week, but I do feel, I guess when you're looking a little long range here, I do feel like they'll find a way to go 2-1 over these next 2 weeks. And I think that they'll obviously be able to lock up a playoff spot with that. But I think that will also, distinctly help them in the division as well. Because even if they lose Sunday, they're a half game back. Green Bay's got Denver, and then they've got the Bears again in Chicago. So if the Bears find a way to go 2-1, they're going to be a game and a half up with 2 games left. Yeah. So
sounds beautiful.
I'm kind of looking at it from that perspective, right? They got 2 games in 3 weeks, which I absolutely hate. I hate the schedule makers for doing that. Don't ever do that with the Packers again. Like, that needs to be enjoyed at the beginning of the season in either the middle or the end, not 3 weeks apart. Like, we've got to be able to tear each other apart on social media. It's got to happen. So that's kind of my longer term outlook. I'm not going to freak out, kind of like the Baltimore game. I'm not going to freak out if they lose this weekend. Obviously, you don't want to see them get blown out, but the goal needs to be 2-1 over these next 3 weeks. And if they can get that done, they're going to be in great position, obviously, to make the playoffs and probably win the division.
Yeah, I feel similar. When I saw the schedule when it first came out, I was like, I didn't love the couple years ago, or was it last year, where we started and ended. I didn't like the week 1 and then week 18, but I also hate this. So it's like, to your point, I think you need, and I feel like they almost do it intentionally because they know that these games, for example, like the week 1 and week 18, if it did come down to week 18 and somebody getting or not getting into the postseason, they want it to be Bears Packers. Right now, I think they were thinking, like, there's a chance that this division could be very close at the end. So let's make them all play each other in the last month.
They gamble right.
Yeah.
I mean, they gamble right if you think about it. Because, I mean, regardless of what happens over these next 3 games, like, both of those games are going to mean a lot. I mean, they're going to be 1 and 2 in the division regardless, unless somehow Detroit wins at least one of these next 2 games, if not both. So it's like, these are going to be very meaningful games. So they did a great job, but I'm like, why?
I know.
This is too much for my anxiety band.
I guess we can be happy that we are playing meaningful football in December, because it's been a bit for that. But Aaron, I appreciate your time. Hopefully next week we're talking about another win, because if we next Monday are talking about a 10-3 Bears team leaving Lambeau with a victory, this fan base is going to be insufferable to the rest of the NFC North.
I'm going to be insufferable on social media.
I mean, also myself. Yeah. All right, Aaron. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a good weekend, good rest of your week.
Yeah, you too.
All right, thank you. Let's continue on Bears Packers Hate Week. I'm joined now by Peter Bukowski. You know him, host of Locked On Packers. I know a lot of Bears fans out there give you a hard time, Peter, but it's part of what it is being Bears Packers, especially when it's Hate Week. So thanks for hopping on.
It is great to be here, and it is part of the deal. I love it. I would be lying if I said I didn't invite it, and so here we are.
Here we are. All right, let's start with the bigger notes. I think it's going to be Jordan Love absolutely dealing on Thanksgiving. Bears fans don't like seeing that, obviously, but some of his accuracy, including what ended up sealing that game-winning on Thanksgiving game. But there's been moments he has 6 touchdowns in the last 5 games, but all 6 of those come in 2 games. So tell us a little bit about what you guys have seen from Jordan Love this season. It's Toyota-thon. That's kind of the joke about it right now. This is his time to shine, I guess.
It's not a joke. If you look at the numbers from week 11 on, the last 2 years, he's been spectacular. And so that's a good sign for the Packers. That was always something that, Aaron Rodgers prided himself in, is the end of the year, you play your best ball. The Matt LaFleur teams, by and large, have played their best football at the end of these seasons. They've gotten off to some slow starts. And so what we're seeing now is an offense where he just looks fully in command. And I think, there was the Vikings game after the Giants game, and that was frustrating for some Packers fans because he looked so good against the Giants in windy conditions. Like, I heard from some Eagles fans this week, because I had some things to say about Jalen Hurts. I watched the tape, Taylor, and I was like, oh my God, like, that offense is a mess. And it is made worse by the fact that Jalen Hurts is just such a physically limited passer. And you could just see, like, he's got a, like, I don't know that it's quite fair to call it a pop gun arm, but like, the caliber is not much larger than a pop gun. And you could see that in those windy conditions. Well, Jordan Love played one of his best games as a pro against the Giants. I was at that game. It was windy as hell in that game, like 25, 30 mile an hour gusts. It affected the kicking game, and he was dealing. And then they play this game against Minnesota where they barely throw the ball, and they just run it down Minnesota's throat because JJ McCarthy stinks and turns the ball over a bunch. And so it was like, Matt LaFleur, can you do something? Like, it's like pokes with stick. Like, Matt, come on. We know you're a creative coach. And then against the Lions, we saw it. And it wasn't like they didn't play with balance. They did. They still ran it. I think there were 25 designed runs to 30 passes. That's what I've been calling for all season, is just be balanced, but lean a little more toward the passing side. And it wasn't just that they were throwing it. They were chucking it deep. They're throwing double moves. They were letting Jordan Love play quarterback at a high level, and he did it. And the throw you mentioned, it is hard to put into words. Falling backward, Aiden Hutchinson and Alim McNeil in your face, and he lays it out perfectly for Dontavian Wicks, away from the coverage. Brian Branch is all over him. Like, it's really good coverage. Even from a clean pocket, it would not have been an easy throw. And so those are the moments, much like Bears fans with Caleb Williams, where you point to those moments where they make special plays and you just go, see, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely have the moments. I mean, even in this was one of Caleb's worst games on Thanksgiving. Luckily, they were able to, on Black Friday, they were able to run the ball, but you still have the touchdown to Cole Kmet earlier, where it's just, you have those little glimpses. And that's what I think makes these quarterbacks so fascinating in general. And so, yeah, I think that as a Bears fan watching that Thanksgiving game, when that pass was completed, I was like quiet for a second. I was like, damn, that was good. That was very good. I don't want to say that, but it was. Let's talk about the conversation in general about the weapons. You and I have talked about this a few times. Yep. No Tucker Kraft. That's a hit. We know. I mean, what he was doing this season, and I honestly, we're happy that we don't have to face Tucker Kraft, honestly. But there's a lot of guys. Romeo Doubs, I think, leads the team in receiving yards, but it still doesn't feel like maybe there's a true number one wide receiver right now. Am I wrong in that, or do you guys feel like Doubs is the guy?
No, I don't think Doubs is the guy. I mean, if there's been a number one receiver since he's gotten back on the field, it's been Christian Watson. I mean, he has sort of taken that role when they need big plays on third down, when they need momentum changing plays, they run stuff for him. And his ability to win deep is so congruent with the way Jordan Love wants to play, and so congruent with the way Matt LaFleur really wants to call his offense. LaFleur would love to be able to kind of design his offense a little bit like the way the Bears have, frankly, where it's a lot of run game, and then when you pass, it's shot plays. It's let's get back off heavy play action and try and hit these shots down the field. Now I think he's been a little bit more willing this year, Matt LaFleur has, than say Ben Johnson, to just get into the straight drop back game. But part of that is the consistency of an experienced quarterback versus a second-year quarterback who's still, what has he had? Not even 30 starts, I think, right under his belt at this point, or maybe, it's got to be right on, just under that. So, that's certainly part of the difference here. But Christian Watson to me has become that guy. They're also getting Jaden Reed back, who was really their number one receiver for most of last year. Even with Christian Watson healthy, he is their zone beater. He one of the highest yards per route run last year against zone coverage. He's the guy that they love to scheme stuff up for too. That without Tucker Kraft, you mentioned, huge loss for the Packers. They don't have a player who they can just spit the ball out to and go make plays. And so like the Bears can do that with DJ Moore. The Bears can probably eventually do that to guys like Luther Burden as well. The Packers don't really have that guy, especially with Savion Williams dealing with an injury. So Reed becomes that guy where they're gonna scheme up the jet sweeps, the receiver screens, those little just sort of underneath crossing routes where it's just like get him the ball with some space and let him go to work. But he can also threaten the defense down the seam. He's a proven deep slot, a receiving option. They love to run him on these big overs where like Jordan Love and maybe only a handful of other guys, probably Caleb Williams, have the arm to make these throws back across the field. In fact, the play that Jaden Reed got hurt on in week 2 is probably the best throw I've ever seen Jordan Love make in a game. It was an outrageous throw, 60 yards down the field into a tight window, and just lays it out perfectly for a touchdown. Unfortunately, it gets called back, and Jaden Reed breaks his collarbone.
Yeah,
so
terrible.
It was one of those like double whammies, like, oh no. But right now, the answer is Christian Watson.
Okay. And so let's talk about the run game. That's another piece of this. To me, I feel like this weekend is going to come down to that when we talk about run defenses, rushing offense. And there's a few reasons. We'll get into that why I believe that. But Josh Jacobs, to me, is one of the better running backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't think the Packers have one of the better rushing offenses in the NFL, though.
No.
What do you believe? Is that contributing from the offensive line? Is it play calling? What do you think is factoring into that run game not really truly getting going yet?
All season, the Packers have had one of the worst, if you look at like the numbers like yards before contact. Josh Jacobs has been one of the lowest running backs in the NFL. Like teams are getting to him before he's able to create positive yardage. I believe the Bears are number one in FTN Fantasy's adjusted line yard metrics. So like they create more open spaces for their running backs than anybody else. The Packers are not doing that consistently. And the running games that is there almost solely because guys like Emmanuel Wilson and Josh Jacobs are making guys miss, or they're running through tackles, or they're creating, a 2-yard gain becomes a 4 or 5-yard gain just because you finish through contact and push the pile a little bit. They have not been explosive in the run game at all. And that's a stark difference from last year. They were creating explosives in the run game last year, and they just haven't been able to this year. Part of that is Jaden Reed being out, someone you're going to create design touches for. And then part of it is they expected Marshawn Lloyd, their 3rd-round pick from a couple of years ago, to come in and contribute. And he made this incredible play in preseason, runs a wheel down the right sideline. Malik Willis throws a perfect pass. He catches it. He's going to make a big play. And he has like a grade 3 hamstring tear. And so he's been out all season since then. We haven't seen him in a regular season game this year. I think he's only played a handful of regular season snaps in his NFL career, just been snake bitten with these injuries. But he is a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. And that, probably not this week necessarily, though they're ramping him up, hoping that he can go. But I think whether it's later in the season or next year, he becomes that guy who can create some explosive plays when not everything is there. To run the ball effectively in the NFL now, you have to be able to create explosives. You're just not going to be able to generally matriculate the ball down the field just running it, unless you're the Chicago Bears playing the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly on Black Friday. Apparently, they just kicked ass and took names in that game, and I'm not afraid to say that. Like that's what happened. But you're not going to do that every week. Even the best running games in the NFL aren't going to do that every week. You have to create, and they create explosive plays, right? It wasn't just 5 yards, 6 yards. It was 10, it was 12, it was 18, it was 30. And that's how you have an effective running game in the modern NFL and have it be a value add for you, which it is for the Bears and it just hasn't been for the Packers.
Yeah, that category kind of flopped from last year to this year because, to your point, last year the Packers were really good at getting those big chunk explosive things when they needed it in the run game, and the Bears were not. And then and everybody was kind of, even in the first 4 weeks, we're hard on DeAndre Swift, and we're like, okay, here we go again. You didn't go get a running back. You waited until the 7th round to draft Kyle Monangai when there was so many running backs on the board. And then things, after probably about 4 or 5 weeks, started to settle in. Some of that, I think, is the offensive line really started gelling, especially interior. Ben Johnson, just creative. Some of the stuff he schemes up when it comes to the run game is obviously a part of it too. But credit to the backs too, because both Monangai and Swift have done a good job at just their vision, improving their vision throughout the season, running guys over, not be, that contact, the yards after contact, but then the yards before contact.
And Monangai has been better than a lot of guys taken a lot sooner in the draft than he was. We thought this was a generational running back draft, and it turns out, like, are any of these guys any good? Like, Monangai might be the best running back from this draft class right now.
Yeah, maybe Scadaboo if he didn't get hurt, but
yeah, okay, fair.
Maybe, but he was drafted late too. So I like later. I want to say
later than we thought he would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just switch over to the defensive side of the ball for the Packers. Michael Parsons, that's the name we're all going to be talking about the most. Yep. Big trade for the Packers. Very sad day for the Bears when we saw that trade happening.
Yeah, echoes of the Khalil Mack trade, though, right?
That's true. And you cope a little where you start making excuses and you're like, well, like he's not as good against the run, so whatever. But it's Micah Parsons, one of the better true pass rushers in the NFL. And so what do you think the Packers game plan this weekend? Because the Bears line is top 4 or 5 offensive line right now in the NFL. Their weakness is the left tackle. That's kind of been the thing. It's been multiple tackles out there, left tackles, that they're trying to figure it out. Looks like they're going to go forward with Ozzie Trapillo. Massive human being, used a draft pick on him, has some strengths, but definitely has some weaknesses. You can take advantage of that side of the line. Micah can play everywhere. That's one thing about him. They'll line him up wherever he wants to line up. So what are your thoughts on how they'll approach that this weekend?
Ozzie, get ready to learn Micah Parsons, buddy. Like, I think that is first and foremost. And what Jeff Hafley has done a really good job of, and he did this spectacularly last week, is he uses Micah Parsons to dictate terms in protection plans. So he will line Micah Parsons up first, third down of the game. He lines Micah Parsons up on one side of the line, and he creates an overload on the backside. But the alignment is such that you have to slide the protection toward Micah Parsons. Well, they did. And Micah Parsons dropped into coverage, and they got a free runner off the backside, and you get a near sack fumble from Xavier McKinney. And they didn't send everybody. Like, if they send everybody, it's more like a cover 0 look. They end up only sending 5, and they dropped, I think it might've been 2 even defensive linemen, but you get a free runner off that because you have to slide the protection toward Micah Parsons. And so another cool thing that they've been doing is they've been putting him right behind like a one shade nose tackle and giving him an opportunity to pick a side. Yeah. And then you can't slide to Micah Parsons if you don't know where he's lined up. Like, he's literally behind, like he looks like a quarterback under center. Yeah. Behind the defensive tackle. And so it's like, okay, which are you going to slide one way or the other? Let's see. And it's up to him to sort of decide what he's going to do. And then that frees up things for other players. Rashawn Gary has certainly been the beneficiary of that this season. Devontae Wyatt, who's hurt, has been the beneficiary of that. Carl Brooks is back this week. Carl Brooks is a really good player. Bears fans remember Carl Brooks's long fingernails against the Bears last year. And so that is certainly going to be something that Jeff Hafley is going to play with. My guess is they're not going to bring a ton of pressure. They don't bring a lot of pressure. They trust this front four to get home. And against the Lions, it was like a boa constrictor. It started off, the Lions were able to get some stuff in the middle quarter, second and third quarters. And then by the fourth quarter, because they had to keep up with the Packers scoring, if Micah Parsons just keeps coming, eventually he's going to get you. Yeah. And we saw that in the fourth quarter where he ends drives and basically ended the game. Lions down 2 scores. If they get a touchdown, it's a different game. Forces a sack on 3rd and goal. And now you got to kick a field goal, and the game was over. The Lions never got the ball again. And he's done that a couple times. He ended the Cardinals game basically by himself. He ended the Giants game basically by himself. He's able in these fourth quarters. Jeff Hafley compared him to Mariano Rivera. He is one of the preeminent. If the Browns won a little bit more, Myles Garrett would be, but they don't. Yeah. So you have, probably the second best pass rusher in the NFL, and he's able to dictate games like that. It's going to be, the narratives are going to be interesting because the Packers probably have the preeminent defensive closer in the league right now, Caleb Williams, and that Bears offense, like, they've won some games in the fourth quarter. I've heard plenty of that this week from Chicago fans. So we'll see. We'll see who can win out in this one, because I don't think this is going to be a blowout either way. I think this can be a close game, relatively speaking, in the fourth quarter. So someone's going to have to will out in that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that you go back, and the thing with the Bears line obviously is playing a ton better. Last year, Caleb Williams was sacked almost 70 times. It's not even anywhere close to that. And I think that when you look at it, some is Caleb. Caleb's done a way better job this season of not taking those sacks and getting rid of the ball. And that pressure to sack ratio has changed a lot. But we've seen pass rushers create problems in other ways. And Max Crosby, for example, that game he wrecked our day the first half of that game. The Bears were able to win it at the end, but he had like 4 tipped passes, a forced fumble, an interception.
Very, like, be honest, very lucky to win that game at the end.
Yeah, it was a blocked kick at the end. So it's like, but granted, we had a lot of those opposite last year. So you take the ones that you can get. But yeah, so it doesn't, I feel like Caleb hasn't been just getting crushed every game with the pass rush, but things have affected what he's able to do. And you never want that to happen. I think it's similar with Jordan Love. There's been games where maybe he's not getting sacked 5, 6, 7 times a game, but once you start getting him uncomfortable, that's when you start maybe seeing some of the other issues arise. But what about the secondary? There's some names back there, obviously, we're still familiar with, but one that I keep seeing pop up recently, Valentine. He's a name that in all of the like ranking PFF stuff, I'm seeing his name is popping up there in the NFC North guys and that back end. So chat a little bit about the secondary in general.
They have to protect these corners a little bit, and that affects the way that they're willing to play. I think Jeff Hafley, if he had to pick, he'd get to play a lot more man coverage than he's played. He would get to play a lot more press than he's played. Now, Carrington Valentine can press, wants to be aggressive. He was outstanding against the Vikings. Now, 9 contributed to that, but you watch the tape, like there's not Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison running free on Carrington Valentine. He is a very physical player. He's going to redirect you, and he is going to let you know about it. If his hands were 30% better, he'd have like 3 or 4 more interceptions this year. He had 2 hit him in the chest against Jameis Winston. Like, he is an instinctive player. He just can't, his ball skills are not great. But if he had good ball skills, if he had good ball skills, he played receiver. So he's a really ascending player for the Packers. They really like the backup Kamal Haddon. Right now, Nate Hobbs is coming back. He's practicing this week. They gave him a big contract, but he's been kind of a nightmare as a boundary corner. Javon Bullard didn't practice on Thursday, so Nate Hobbs could play in the slot, which is where he played most of the time for the Raiders. That was his best position. So that would be something we haven't seen for this Packers defense, something that they'd have to adapt to. And then Keyshawn Nixon is just a solid corner. He's not going to change your life. He's not going to be Revis Island by any means. But teams are just like, they're not really testing him. I don't know why, because I think Carrington Valentine is just straight up a better player, but they just play sides. So they're not going to follow anybody. They're not going to chase. They're just going to do what they do. Now, the straws that stir the drink, though, are the safeties. Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams. I believe Ben Johnson called them the best safety duo that in the league, or the best safety duo that they'll face, one of those two. But I think you could say one of the best in the league. Like, it's Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, and then these 2 guys. Like, I really think that Evan Williams especially is playing that well this year. He is a huge part of what they do in the run game. Just if you just want to watch a player be a heat-seeking missile as a run defender, Evan Williams is that guy. And he can do it from depth, Taylor. That's the cool thing about him, is you don't have to insert him into the fit. You don't have to have him in the box. He can do it from deep. Like, every week he's got a highlight play where he's coming from a deep half to make a play behind the line of scrimmage in the run game, because he's just so instinctive. He is so confident in his reads and is usually right. Like, I cannot think of a play this year where he flies downhill and that opens up something over the middle of the field because he was wrong. Like, he just really has a feel for the game. The football intelligence is off the charts, and it has to be. He's not the most physically gifted guy you've ever met. He was a 4th round pick for a reason. And he was a high 4th round pick. Like, people thought he was going to be more like, I talked to him about this. He thought he was going to be more like 6th, maybe 7th round player. And the Packers, they took a chance on him. And I said earlier in the year, I think he should be a Pro Bowl player. I think that's how good he's been. Sealed the game against the Giants with an interception off Jameis Winston. Sealing is overstating it against JJ McCarthy, because that game had been over for what felt like hours. But had basically the clinching interception in that one. So the ball skills for those 2 guys, Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams, there's a reason the Packers have one of the best explosive play defenses in the NFL. Teams are just not throwing deep on those safeties because they respect the playmaking ability of Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams.
So before I let you go, let's chat. I just want to get some of your thoughts on the Bears side of things, because the tweet that went viral recently was, if you take away the Bears takeaways,
Oh, yeah.
then the defense is
Ironic wording, right?
Yeah, if you take them away, which I don't think any Bears fan would argue. I think the more defense side of things would be that, there's been no Tremaine Edmonds, no TJ
I had a
Edwards,
lot of
no
Bears
Noah
fans
Sewell,
arguing
no.
that way, but okay.
And then you talk about the corners. You played the majority of the season without Kyler Gordon and without Jalen Johnson. So yes, the defense is not what you thought. The good news for the Bears is these guys are coming back, and Jalen Johnson and Kyler now back. Looks like TJ Edwards will be back this weekend. The still problem with the Bears is that there's still no pass rush. There's no natural. You talk about the Packers, they don't have to have pressure or send pressure, do extra things because they have that. Bears don't. They have to. Dennis Allen's had to be very creative in what he does in manufacturing some of those things and disguises and trying to find ways to get that pressure. But chat a little bit defensively. The takeaways are going to be a conversation, but outside of that, what are you talking about in the Packers world of the Bears defense?
So the thing that it's funny, because this was a discussion with the Packers defense last year in the offseason. People were going, they didn't buy it with the Packers defense. And they went, oh, the takeaways were the thing, and takeaways are volatile. And that's true. So let's be clear about this. I think takeaways are a volatile statistic. Right now, this is crazy, Taylor. I'm sure you know this number, but plus 17 in turnover margin this season. The next closest team is plus 9. They are lapping the field in turnover margin, and it's because they've taken the ball away more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And so those sorts of things, when you're also not good play to play. So if you exclude turnovers, and let me explain what happens here. When you exclude turnovers, what you're doing is you're excluding turnovers for everybody. So how are the teams when they're not creating turnovers? All of them. The Bears are 30th in EPA per play. Okay. So when they're not creating turnovers, they're not defending soundly. And that's borne out by their yards per play numbers, because yards per play numbers don't include turnovers, right? Because there's yards per play. They're giving up almost 7 yards per play. It's 30th in the NFL. So on a down-to-down, play-to-play basis, the defense is not very good. The last team to turn opponents over like this was the 2019 Steelers. Well, that Steelers team was awesome. Like, that defense was really, really good down-to-down too. And so that's when you get into these conversations about, like, okay, are you getting a little lucky with turnovers, or are you not? Last year, the Packers, if you exclude turnovers, they were still a top 10 defense by EPA. So my argument was, well, yeah, look, yes, they created a bunch of turnovers, but even when they weren't, they were really good. That's not the case for the Bears. And I think that the Bears' problem this week for the Packers, and the reason why I think the Packers will win, not to preempt if you were going to ask me to predict anything, but is Jordan Love is the number 1 quarterback this year in EPA, quarterback rating, PFF grade, whatever, from a clean pocket. If you give Jordan Love time, he's been the best quarterback in the NFL this year by efficiency. But if you blitz him, he's also been the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. The teams that have been able to have success have been able to do it by rushing 4 and just creating pressure that way. And if you're the Bears, you just haven't done that all year. So if you get an outlier game and you can do that, maybe you can force some turnovers. I like that would be surprising, right? Given the track record of the teams this year, anything can happen any given Sunday. Coach Jeff Jagosinski is a former Packers OC. He does our Locked On Packers squad show. He always says every Sunday you're eligible for an ass kicking. So let's be clear, in a 1-game sample, anything can happen. But I just don't think the Bears are going to be able to get enough pressure on Jordan Love to make him make the mistakes that the Bears have gotten so far this year. The Packers are also one of the best turnover teams in the NFL. 7-0 when Jordan Love doesn't throw an interception. They only have 8 wins. So, that's a big deal for this team. And, I think that's going to be enough. Turnovers dictate wins most of the time. I think the Packers, or the rest of the league, is like 125-36 or something like that this year when a team gets 2+ turnovers. Well, the Bears average 2+ turnovers. So of course they've got a great winning percentage. Like, everyone wins a lot of games when they get a lot of turnovers. The question is, can you do it when you don't get those turnovers? And so if the Packers don't win the ball or don't turn the ball over, I think they win this game.
Yeah, and I don't know if any Bears fan, well, maybe they do argue with you. I don't know. I don't think I've seen from the start of the season a moment where I felt like this defense was playing really well. I just think there's been reasons for that outside of just the defense sucking. Like I said, a lot of people not playing, But to your point, I think
the run defense isn't any better.
Yeah, well, and the run defense has gotten better. It was terrible the first probably like
It was.
7, 8, 9 weeks. Every time a team would come play Chicago, it was like, okay, well, here's your chance for your running back to do whatever they want to do. It has gotten a little better. Part of that, I think, is the health of the linebackers. Some of that, I think, is Grady Jarrett. He was very beat up, so he wasn't playing. He's helped. Kyler Gordon on the field helps a ton in the run game. So some of those things I
They
do
did
think
better against Philly for sure. Like Saquon,
Yeah.
even though Saquon is averaging, I think 60 yards per game this year, like they held that running game in check, and that's not a small thing.
Yeah. So we will see. But to your point, I do think that the Bears have relied a lot on the takeaways, but I think that's fine because it's their identity. I feel in the first 4 or 5 weeks, it felt like this isn't sustainable. Like we're not going to be able to keep doing this all year. So other pieces are going to have to step up. But we've been able to do it now for 12, 13 weeks where it's just
That's
like
the crazy part.
when
At a certain part, it doesn't matter if it's sustainable if you can sustain it in like the playoffs, right? Like every game, it seemed like in the playoffs was determined by who turned the ball over the most. And so if you just create a bunch of turnovers, you can go on a run, no doubt. And that's what's happened, with the Bears this year. It's been work on being 6-1 in 1-score games, and you create a bunch of turnovers and you create big plays on offense. Like you're going to give yourself a chance to win a lot of these games.
Yeah. And so I agree with you though, in the sense of, I think the Bears, if they're not getting a couple turnovers this weekend, it's probably going to be a win for the Packers. And I said that on a podcast earlier, just because it does feel like that's been the recipe for wins, is getting a takeaway or two, letting the run game just dominate everything, the pass game complement when you really need it to. A lot of them obviously have been fourth quarter comebacks. And I could see it coming down to that fourth quarter again, because that's kind of the football we played all year. But Peter, as usual,
Taylor, can I ask you a question? I know we're running long.
Of course. Yeah, no, go ahead.
So the Caleb Williams piece, we haven't said that much about Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's intentional, maybe it's not. But the completion percentage numbers, the accuracy numbers, the on target numbers, when I watch the tape, like the accuracy has not been there consistently. What is the explanation for that from your standpoint? And how much of that do you think is fixable? Because it's also the case that he's throwing into the fewest tight windows in the NFL among preferred starters. So it's like he's getting some good looks and not hitting them. So my question is, why not? What are you seeing? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think that the accuracy clearly still has to get better. But to your point earlier, I think we see the moments where he can hit and type. Honestly, there's times where I feel like the more difficult passes he does better than the easy stuff. And that's where, like, if Ben Johnson
he's got a little Jameis Winston in him.
Do what?
He's got a little Jameis Winston in him that way. Like he's going to make the most amazing throw you've ever seen.
But not turnover. Like,
and then he's going to without the interceptions, but then he's going to airmail an out route. And you're just sort of like, dude, I just saw the throw you just made. Like, can you just do that? Do the thing, please.
Consistently. And that's, so to me, I think that if Ben Johnson wanted to just stack up his completion percentage, which he said in the beginning of the year, he wanted it to be close to 70%. That's obviously not happening right now. But if he wanted it to, I think he would simplify the offense and tell Caleb to focus more on the checkdowns and do some of these quicker things. And he's not. He's letting Caleb do some kind of the out of structure stuff, sure, but then he's also still asking him to complete more of these difficult passes, because I think he knows he can, and he wants him to get better at those things. So to me, if we wanted to pad his completion percentage, I think you could easily say, here's some easy button things for you to do. Make it a 65 completion percentage, and so everybody stops talking. But Ben Johnson won't do that, because Ben Johnson's not making it easy on Caleb Williams, and I'm fine with that. I do think you guys know this from last year. The drops were a huge issue in Green Bay last year, and this year, for whatever reason, that is a part of the Bears offense too. Every game, you're seeing 3 or 4 that are incredible throws by Caleb that are dropped. They hit the hands, and it's just right there. You're missing 4 or 5. He's throwing the ball away, like against the Eagles. If you go back and watch that, there were definitely a few that he just threw away. And so that's kind of affecting. So I think there's a lot of factors, but there's no denying there's still a lot of room to grow and where he is in the accuracy part of things. I just think that there were so many boxes that they had to check after last year of things that regressed under Shane Waldron, that they're like, okay, let's get this sack rate down. Let's start with that. Let's get some of this, you only can play out of structure stuff out of the way. And so they figured some of that stuff out. Let's use your legs a little bit more. We've started to do that intentional rather than just taking off and running wild and losing yards.
He looks
Some of
faster
the
this year. He looks faster this year.
so fast. There's been some times where I'm like, I don't think he ran that fast last year. Like, I really don't. So, Peter, I think it's a combination of things. I think that there's still a lot of room to grow, but I do think it is. I'm not looking, I don't watch it. And from the way that Ben Johnson talks, I don't feel like it feels unfixable. I feel like it's Ben Johnson saying, I'm giving him all of these 100 things to get better at because I know he can be, and the ceiling for me is higher. If I didn't believe that, he wouldn't throw the ball 40 times when they're running the ball the way they were against the Eagles. And he almost did. He threw the ball 37 times still. And I think Ben Johnson would have lowered that quite a bit if he didn't have the confidence that Caleb could get better at some of the things that he's struggling with.
They also ran like 100 plays in that game, didn't they?
I know, it's so many. Like, I was shocked at the end. I was just sitting there. I'm like, I can't believe we just dominated the way we did. But
the Eagles had 17 snaps in the first half of that football game.
Yeah.
17.
Yes. Let me ask you a final one before I let you go, actually. Okay. So Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell. Yeah. This is
Thanks, I hate it.
Conference now. If you were ranking them at this point in time, what would your ranking look like?
Oh man.
Putting you on the spot. Sorry.
No, let me start here. I think this is the best coaching division in the NFL. I don't think it's particularly close. And I think this is the best coaching top to bottom we have seen in my lifetime in the NFC North. Like add the NFC Central. I don't think we've ever seen a top to bottom list of coaches where all of them have a case to be top 10 coaches in the NFL. I think that's true. It's funny because I think before the year, I would have had a different ranking. I think before the year, I would have had Kevin O'Connell first.
Yeah.
And I think that part of what's gone on this year has to be hung on his neck. I think picking JJ McCarthy and believing in JJ McCarthy is partially a Kevin O'Connell problem. And so, but I do think he's just so smart and so charismatic. I really just like him a lot. And I think this is so tough. I think I would like to see more from Ben Johnson. So let's start there. I think he's an incredible schemer of offense. I think we have to give him time. If we're just ranking offense, like if we're just ranking play callers, okay, let's do that. That'll be easier for me.
Okay.
I think Ben Johnson will be 1.
Okay.
I think Matt LaFleur will be 2. I think Kevin O'Connell will be 3. And I think Dan Campbell will be 4. And I think, but none of that's not a slight to any of them. Like, I think they're all really, really, really good coaches. I think if you put any of those guys in like the AFC South, they'd be the best coach in the conference or the division. Like, no question to me. But that's not the division they play in. So like total package, I think it's still it's still early on Ben Johnson. That's part of the problem. Matt LaFleur's been the most successful coach. He's been the most gotten the furthest the most often. I think he's done the most with less. So it's hard for me not to have him right at the top, but I think you could make the case for Kevin O'Connell or Dan Campbell. Again, this is not a slight on Ben Johnson. He's 11, 12 games into his NFL head coaching career. So let's give it a little time.
Yeah. Do you think the like shirt off, all of that stuff was cheesy?
Yes, but I think a lot of coaching stuff is cheesy. I think a lot of being a coach is artifice. It is doing things to get your guys to a certain place. Watch Dabo Swinney one time in front of a podium. Like, that man is cheesy as hell. He's won national titles. Like, it's okay to be a little cheesy as a head coach. Did I think it was a little cringe? Yeah. Did I think it was a little try hardy? Yeah. But I think a lot of things that coaches do are like that. And it did, though, I will say, remind me a little bit after the Packers lost to the Vikings in Minnesota. They threw a parade for Sam Darnold in the locker room. And they've been can I swear on the show? They've been a disaster since then. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with the Bears, but it did remind me of that. Like, we're celebrating a regular season win a little too aggressively, aren't we? For, it's November. Let's wait for December, January for those.
Because they're 9-3 and you're number 1 in the NFC. If you're the Bears, you're doing that.
I get it. If you're the Bears, but
like, you're different. You're a Packers fan. You don't have to deal with
this. Goes back to Kyle Brandt's word on the Packers, whatever it was, 6-8 weeks ago, and that was entitled. We are entitled. The Packers. A Packers coach and team would never do that on a Black Friday win ever. It just wouldn't happen. So,
well, call me entitled. We may say your guys are boring then.
Listen, fine. We'll take it. Boring winning 10, 11, 12 games every year is very good. It's like my wife who's a former D1 golfer. I say, isn't it boring to hit every fairway and every green? She said, no, it's really fun to be really good.
Yeah, it's
So-
good. Well, and that's what with the Ben Johnson, I think it's inside joke things because the Wiener Circle play said if Ben Johnson takes his shirt off.
I know
so,
the joke, but like,
so there's like other things, but I also think every single game that's been, I mean, the first win, they started 0-2, and that first win after, they're already acting like that. So I think it's more so the energy of the team and the buy. And yeah, to your point, I do think things
for
are
a guy that I
changing.
thought was a little bookish, and we had
Oh.
questions about like, can he be a leader and all those things?
Oh, he's not. He's wild.
He's not that. And
He's
and
a
it's funny, I was
psychopath.
talking to someone at the combine, and they were like, people think that he is this, and he's not. He is someone who can command the room. And early on, he wasn't like that, but he's grown into that, and he knew he needed to do that.
Mhm.
And so I think that, you know, he could have left 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He didn't. And one of the reasons he didn't is he felt like he wasn't ready. He wanted to not just find the right opportunity, but he wanted to be the best version of himself, because you get one opportunity to be a head coach, maybe two. After that, you're done.
Yeah.
So you have to be really judicious, even though there's only 32, to make sure that you are absolutely ready when you get that opportunity. And look at all these coaches in the division are first-time head coaches. Think about that. All these guys are first-time head coaches, not a retread among them. And I think that speaks to, you know, the potential for this being a bloodbath of a division for years to come.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it at this point. Peter, we went really long, but I appreciate you. No, I'm sorry for keeping you, but I appreciate it as always. And I hope you guys lose this weekend.
Same to you.
All right.